Hi guys, and today we move on to the interwar years with the peacekeeping and peacemaking policies, with a bit of a focus on the League of Nations. So after the First World War, you have all these powers and lots of people dead, and of course everybody wanted to have a peaceful time because they just had a quote unquote the Great War. So um, with all the major players of the war just coming up, the winning side at least, they just came up and decided to form this kind of coalition and just make peace treaties and whatnot. So the leaders that gathered in Paris in 1919 to make the treaties were under intense pressure from public opinion because many had given promise that they would bring peace after the end of the war to maintain their position in government. So they were actually forced and they were actually obliged to do something at the conferences. And it's not just that, it's because they also represented their people, and the fact that they had suffered a lot, and it just like well, last the couple of years previous they had lost so many men and lost so many lives. It was quite obliged to actually do something at the peace treaty conferences. So for the French, they wanted to protect themselves, given that they had been invaded twice already. First in 1871 at the Franco-Prussian War, or 1870, sorry, and then in 1914, just like 5 years ago. So the French wanted to ensure the security by weakening Germany entirely, by just wrecking them. Because if Germany does not have a military, Germany doesn't have territory, and Germany doesn't have an economy, it's basically a lame duck. They can't do anything. So therefore, France can maintain her security. So they want, as I've said, they just wanted to prevent the repetition of the invasions of the Franco-Prussian War and the 5 years previous in the last war. So Clemenceau, the French premier, demanded that Alsace-Lorraine were to be returned to France because they had lost Alsace-Lorraine in the Franco-Prussian War in the 1870s. The Rhine were to be taken away from Germany because, like all the peoples, and it's a strip of land that's quite vital, and it's gonna be set up as an independent state, so it's like a sort of a semi-buffer state. And Germany was to be demilitarized, and reparations were to be paid to France to pay for the damage done. So it makes sense, because you lose a war, you have to pay compensation. So the reparations and damage were, yeah, had to be paid to basically everyone on the winning side, but Germany was later like slapped with a very hefty price tag. But anyway, moving on, we have Lord George of the UK. In January 1918, he outlined his demands that Germany was to return every single territory it had occupied during the war, the Polish state was to be created, and self-government for the nations of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and for the non-Turkish peoples within the Ottoman Empire. David Lloyd George, representing the UK, given that UK was basically had the biggest empire in the entire world and governed over a quarter of the planet, sometimes it's sort of seen as an attempt to once again destroy Germany's chances of building empire again while maintaining its empirical superiority, and while at the same time, why not grab a little bit of land from the Germans as well? So it's sort of a self-centered and an imperialistic ideology behind his demands, but in the end they just all wanted to get Germany down on her knees. Lord George felt that Britain would be best served. However, Lord George felt that Britain would be best served by the German economic recovery because he was more focused in the long run, where Germany could trade and do economic relations with the powers to just once again restore the pre-war economic situation and the British superiority in trade routes and stuff. After all, Britain had built her empire on trade routes, and securing these trade routes at the time before the advent of aeroplanes and long FedEx, and before like shipping services like FedEx and whatever, Britain basically dominated the entire world because people needed goods and money to survive. So well played there, UK. And if we move on to the USA, President Woodrow Wilson had 14 points. They were idealistic and based on the reasons why the war had broken out. Again, at this point we can sort of say that America is playing its so-called world police role, in which the idealistic American peoples under the concept of freedom and democracy wished for everybody to just quote-unquote, why not stop fighting and just get along. To be honest, it's really idealistic, and I agree with those notes that we made, because in the end human nature will always resort to greed or war or conflict somehow. So yes, it's a nice thought, but no, it actually doesn't really work, because at the time the concept of self-sacrifice and democracy was not a big factor and would not surpass over imperialism and empire and money and all that stuff, because it was still a time of great powers and self-interest. So Woodrow Wilson, you did well, but nobody listened to you, and it's kind of childish, to be honest, wishing that everybody would just disarm and stuff. And in a way, seeing through your 14 points, it's actually kind of sneaky, because in this way you actually maintain you actually create an American superiority. Not that you already need it, because America had already been was already the biggest industry and economic power by the end of the war, given that, well, second to the British Empire, but given that as a whole, as a single country, America became extremely powerful. So again, well played there, Wilson, but sadly no one listened to you. As we can see, he stressed the importance of national self-determination, general disarmament, and freedom of navigation, trade, and an end to secret treaties. Not likely in a world where bureaucracy and the old European aristocrats still dominate, as opposed to the American New Wave and free peoples and whatever. And Wilson wanted to create a League of Nations to secure world peace. But why did you not join the League of Nations then? Well, because Congress said that America would kind of keep out of future conflicts and engage in a period of isolationism. It's sort of a dick move, to be honest. You create this thing to basically guarantee world peace if you are at the head of it, or if you join it, given that you have lots of men and resources and money, but you decide not to, and just because of Congress you leave the other powers to just deal with it, which is kind of sad. Italy had been promised part of the Ottoman Empire and a share in Germany's colonies, etc., but they didn't get all of it, which we will cover in the next set of notes. If you would care to stick around and listen, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in a bit. Well, in the next video anyway. Bye bye.